Welcome to Multiculturalism and Diversity. My name is Warren Chalklen. I'm a PhD candidate at Texas A&M University, and I'm a very passionate educator. You'll notice by my accent that I'm not from the United States or the United Kingdom or even Australia. I'm from South Africa, and I'm very, very passionate about issues of multiculturalism and diversity. Because of my teaching background, I connect a lot of what I learn to this idea of multicultural education because they have very strong connections. And this first lecture is really about introducing you to some core concepts, and I'm really looking forward to this journey that we're about to embark on. What is our agenda? I will be covering a little bit about what we'll be doing over the next couple of weeks. I'll be defining multiculturalism and multicultural education and talking about the principles that we use and talking about measurement and reflection and how we can tie all these pieces together. All right, I begin each lecture with a question that is designed to begin to bring out some of the core ideas because I'm a constructivist in nature and I believe that all people have the knowledge inside of them. My goal is to draw it out of you and to use the knowledge that you have and build on that. So the question that I'm going to begin with is, how can we build better teams? I recently saw commercials for team building exercises, and I wondered whether they actually addressed many of the factors that actually keep teams, which are made up of people, apart. Why is it that we have million and billion dollar industries that work on team building and building relationships and connections between people? It must be because there are difficulties in that space. Now, if you're someone at home who's in the working world or been in the working world or currently in college, university, or someone who's just interested in multiculturalism in general, one of the questions you've got to be asking yourself, and one of the reasons why you're probably in this class, is you're thinking to yourself, where do you connect in this idea of multiculturalism and how does it apply to you? So let's get back to the question, how can we build better teams? Now, the strongest teams are those that are able to bring together different strengths and understand different so-called weaknesses or misunderstandings amongst people. Why multiculturalism is important is because it gives you tools, it gives you a set of frameworks in which you can begin to unpack the people around you and understand them better and help them understand you better. And the end result of that is better teams, more productive teams, better individuals, more productive individuals, and the ultimate benefit of it is more inclusive, safe, and humane societies. So I want you to think about this idea of team building and how it relates to you in your context. And I think that's an appropriate way for us to get started in some of the meat of this class. So, what are some broad multicultural themes that we're going to be dealing with? Okay, I'm going to draw your attention to the center of the screen. We look at the broad themes. We're going to be looking at culture. What is culture and identity? We're going to be looking at space. By space, I mean inhabited space, but also the internal space that we exist in as people. And then I'm going to be having a focus on young people. Many of you who take this class are going to be pre-service teachers. And so looking at young people is a very, very important component. So let's begin with culture. What is culture? There's a whole lecture where we talk about what culture is and how it affects you. And many people will say to me that they do not have a culture. And what my class is about is helping you unpack what your culture is and some of the very big markers that make it up. Within culture, we'll be talking about issues of race and ethnicity. That'll be actually lecture 1, where we'll be talking about racism and how race works, the different interpretations. We'll be talking about gender and class, social economic status, all right? When it comes to identity, we'll be talking a little bit about sexual orientation as well as religion. So how people identify, we'll be using words such as my identity and how I identify, okay? These are just giving you some insight into the kind of discourse. By discourse, I mean the kind of terms that we'll be introducing you to over this class, and hopefully they'll make more sense as we progress. Okay, by space, I talk about issues of language and geography. when I came to the United States, and you'll notice when I started this lecture, I spoke about the UK and Australia, and the fact that my accent is from a different place, South Africa. And many people will say that I speak English in a very different way to English people, Australian people, and people here in the United States. And so, language, even though we're speaking English, there's different parts of language that are very, very important. And part of understanding multiculturalism is unpacking the way language shapes the way we behave and the way that we do things. And it gives us a marker in terms of our geography, where we're from. And that's a very important component to understand as well. Now, looking at young people, I'll be talking a bit about exceptionalities, exceptional students. We'll be talking about differently abled students. And finally, we'll be talking a little bit about youth culture. We'll be talking a little bit about hip hop. We'll be talking a little bit about the way in which young people identify and shape cultural experiences. And then finally, the final lecture will be pulling these pieces together and giving you an understanding of how you can actually use these things in your daily life. Okay, with that being said, we have two helpful texts. I don't get paid or have any connection to these texts other than the fact that I've read these texts and I think they're very accessible. I have a preference towards diversity consciousness, mainly because of its accessibility. But Golnick and Chin's Multicultural Education, a Pluralistic Society is a canon. A lot of scholars who teach in multicultural education, particularly in various colleges of education across the nation and the world, use this text. And so it's important for me to share that with you. But Diversity Consciousness is a fantastic book for those who are beginning to really unpack this idea of diversity consciousness. So I really encourage you. I will be referencing these texts as we go along in the class. All right, so let's get into it. I hope you have a pen and paper, your laptop ready, and you're excited to get into some content here. So let's talk a little bit about multiculturalism and multicultural education, okay? Now, it's a concept that acknowledges the important role of diversity in the lives of students, families, and builds on it to promote equality and social justice in education, okay? Now, multicultural education, remember my background is in education, so I start off with that component. But multiculturalism is about promoting equality and social justice anywhere. Whether students, we can substitute that for children, we can substitute that for young people. Families look different around the world. And so multiculturalism encompasses all kinds of difference. Everyone is different. So multiculturalism encompasses us all and pushes to promote equity and equality amongst us. And not only that, where there are disparities, it looks to create some kind of justice. Okay, so Golnick and Chin frame multicultural education in this way. Okay, now there are very few slides in this first lesson. I want to give you some principles of multiculturalism and multicultural education. All right, principle number one is, I would like to summarize this as adaptation in terms of the way you approach things. So if you're a teacher, there would be teaching approaches and materials that are sensitive and relevant to people. If you're in the workplace, for example, these are teaching or using approaches, whether you're hiring someone or working for a boss or working with colleagues, using approaches that are sensitive to them. For example, if you see a woman wearing hijab, who's of the Muslim faith, using approaches that are sensitive to those particular faith and the practices. For example, ordering lunch and making sure there's no pork if you have a Jewish or Muslim colleague, or even a vegan colleague or someone who does not feel comfortable with pork. That very simple example is about being sensitive to the people that are around you. Okay, number two, the learning styles of students and the teaching styles of the teacher are understood to develop effective instructional strategies. Okay, if you're a teacher, this means that everything you do has to be about making sure that you teach in the way that students can learn. If you're a manager, if you're a boss, if you're someone in the working world, it's about using strategies that are effective with your colleagues such that their strengths are brought out and your strengths are brought out at the same time. Okay. Number three, using oral and non-verbal communication. Where I come from, shaking someone's hand with your left hand is considered rude. It's a non-verbal slight against someone. Okay? So understanding people is about understanding both the oral, what we're saying, and the non-verbal, what we're not saying, but we are saying through our bodies. Okay? Very, very important when you're teaching in a classroom to really understand the students in front of you and the way they communicate. Often in their cultures, they communicate non-verbally. Okay? Now, in the workplace, this has very, very important consequences for things like sexual harassment, for example, or things like jokes and humor, okay? And how those kind of things, those oral communications, can be taken in very different ways. So, being multicultural and being sensitive is about understanding both the oral and the nonverbal. Put another way, the verbal and the nonverbal communication. So, multiculturalism principle number 5 is about integration. So often students will tell me that they have international days where they dress up in different cultures and they have different food from different cultures, and that's the way they integrate it. And that's fine, but the next question I ask them is, what about the rest of the year? Okay? And so multicultural education is about integrating the perspectives of all students into the curriculum on a daily basis, making it an important part of the discussion. In the workplace, this is just as important. Understanding why Muslims are fasting during Ramadan, understanding why Yom Kippur is so important to the Jewish community, why Christmas is so important to the Christian community, understanding why someone may want to go to Hajj, for example, or understanding why someone may refer to uncles as brothers, or cousins as brothers, or cousins as sisters, understanding the family makeup. These are kind of things that, if integrated into not only the curriculum but the workplace, can really make people feel safe and really secure in the environment that they're in. Okay, number 6. This is a very important piece of multiculturalism. There's one stream of multiculturalism that talks about multiculturalism just as awareness. But there's another piece that talks about using multiculturalism to address inequalities, to address oppression, such as racism, ageism, sexism, classism, these different isms that we have. Okay? So I'm going to be applying this multicultural class as a way of making you aware. And my hope is that part of it at the same time is to really drive you to address some of the places and spaces that you have around you where inequalities and various forms of oppression can take place. And so my agenda through this class is to make you aware and give you the tools to make your own choices. Okay, finally, multiculturalism is about bringing people together. It's about using people as resources to teach and to learn from. Often I'll tell teachers that your students will teach you how to teach them. When I'm giving talks in different organizations and corporations to managers, I tell them that their employees will teach them how to manage them. Okay? And that sometimes involves actually incorporating resources from the local community. And that is a very, very effective strategy. Where you don't know, multiculturalism really encourages you to find out, to connect to other people and other resources. Okay, so what are some takeaways from this very quick introduction to multicultural education and multiculturalism? You'll see over the next lessons that you'll see that I break it down. I take a bit more time, but this is just to give you a brief introduction. So there's 3 main takeaways here. Multiculturalism is a tool to build a more just world. Understanding difference can be a huge asset to you. Number 2, the 7 principles of multicultural education can be applied to any multicultural context. Even if you're in a homogeneous community, there are differences in that community. And as you go through this class, those differences will become more aware. You'll become more aware of those things. Okay. Now, finally, this next set of courses are designed to extend your knowledge base in multiculturalism and diversity. My goal is to build your awareness, to build your understanding, and to slowly take you on a journey where by the end you'll be able to not only know issues around diversity and multiculturalism, but be able to apply them to your daily life. I look forward to this wonderful adventure that we're about to embark on, and I welcome you to please provide me feedback and to help me help you have a wonderful learning experience alongside you. Let's do it.